right, good morning everybody. My name is Sabrina. I'm going to be doing the youth group class today. I hope everybody's doing well on this Sunday. And we're going to start off really quickly into something. I've got a question for you guys. We're going to zoom in here real quick. Who can tell me who this is? What about this one? And this one? And how about this one? Okay, so the first one, if you guessed Captain Marvel, you're wrong, because it wasn't. It was Black Widow. Second one, for those Star Wars fans, that was Rey, the Last Jedi. And the third one was, of course, Wonder Woman. Now, the fourth one might be a little bit trickier. If you guessed the Queen of Sheba, you might have been a little bit close, but not quite. It was actually Esther. And that's who we're going to be discussing today, Esther. So, the Book of Esther, it's actually a really, really short book. And it's interesting because it doesn't mention God. So the interesting part about it is that you guys have to kind of see where God is in that book. Like, for example, the actions of people or, things like that. Actually, before we get into the Book of Esther, we're going to do a prayer real quick that I hope you guys will learn. And it's a really short, quick prayer. Let's bow our heads and pray. God in heaven, hear my prayer. Keep me in thy loving care. Be my guide in all I do. Bless all those who love me too. Amen. Okay, so Esther, she was a leader, but was she also a hero? We're gonna find out. We're gonna get into it. So Esther was the niece of someone called Mordecai. This was back in Persia, in the Empire of Persia. Now the king of Persia started this festival, this feast. It was long, super long. They knew how to party back then. It was like 187 days long. Now on the last day of the feast, he was very happy, very full, very feeling good. So he told his people, hey, go call my wife. And his wife's name was Vashti. Now she was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not feeling it. I really don't want to get out there. So she didn't appear. And so the king was very displeased with her. So he actually had her banished. And then the king was like, well, I want to see what's out there. I want to see, girls, maidens. So he sort of had a beauty pageant, if you would. Okay, so there's this beauty pageant, sort of. Really, it was all the maidens from the land were brought before the king, or the most beautiful ones, said to be the most beautiful ones. Anyway, so Mordecai heard about this event that was happening. So he told his niece, Esther, like, hey, why don't you go? Don't tell anybody that you're Jewish. Just go and see what happens. So Esther went, and she ended up being chosen by the king of Persia to be his next queen. So Esther becomes queen. So that's great, right? So that means that, Mordecai, being her uncle, is close to Esther. Anyway, it just so happens that he was walking down the street or somewhere, and it's in the Book of Esther, so if you want to know exactly where he was, let's read the book. So anyway, he becomes aware of this plot to assassinate the king of Persia. And so he's like, oh my God. So he goes and he tells Esther. And then Esther, in turn, makes the king aware of that somebody's trying to assassinate him. So, of course, they were able to save the king's life. And Mordecai, of course, becomes his hero, right? So then we're introduced to somebody called Haman in the Book of Esther. Now, Haman was elevated by the king, and everybody was supposed to bow down to him because, you know, he was elevated by the king. But Mordecai, again, he was like, you know what? I'm not feeling it. So he didn't bow down to Haman. And this made Haman very, very, very angry. So Haman then goes to the king, and they come up with this decree to kill all Jews because Mordecai, of course, is Jewish, like Esther. So there's this decree that, you know, this whole nation of people are going to be executed, genocide, execution, whatever you guys want to call it. So that's not good. Anyway, once Mordecai and Esther become aware of this decree, they come up with a plan to try to ask the king, you know, to revoke or reverse his decree. But the king can't do that. So anyway, Mordecai tells Esther, hey, go before the king and, you know, plead with him, ask him not to do this to the Jewish people. And Esther said, well, I can't do that because he hasn't called me, and if he hasn't called me, then I can't go before him because I could be killed. I mean, like, under pain of death, right? So we're going to read a couple of verses from the Bible. This is a Bible, in case you guys haven't seen one. This is a Bible. I mean, like, a Bible. Anyway, we're going to read from Esther, book 4, chapter 4, verse 16. And it says, go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. Esther was determined that if she was killed, then she was going to be killed, but she was going to try to save her people, right? So we're going to read another verse from the Bible, because she does go before the king, and the king does agree to see her. I mean, he was happy to see her. So we're going to read one more verse from the Bible. It's from chapter 5, verse 3 of Esther. Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. So basically, the king was so happy to see her, and he was like, you can ask me for anything, even if it's half of my kingdom, I will give it to you. And Esther was like, kudos. Okay, so Esther told the king, you know, I am holding this banquet in your honor. Can you please come and bring Haman? The king said, okay, sure. So they went to this banquet, they all feasted, they all drank, they were all happy. And so the king again offers Esther half of his kingdom. So one more Bible verse and then we're done, I promise you guys. So it is still from chapter 5, and it's verse 6, and it says, and the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. So again, the king offers Esther half of his kingdom if she wanted it. So anyway, Esther at this banquet tells the king, you know what? Let's all enjoy it. I'm going to have a second banquet, you know, tomorrow night. So why don't you come, and why don't you bring Haman with you? And the king was like, great. So they all part ways. Haman goes out into the streets. He's all happy. He's drank a lot of wine. And then he sees Mordecai, and he just remembers again that Mordecai refused to bow before him, and he had this hatred towards Mordecai. I don't know why, but he just did. So he's fuming, and so he starts thinking, he's like, what can I do? So he's like, that's it. I'm going to build a gallows and I'm going to have Mordecai hanged. I'm going to ask the king to hang Mordecai because, well, he didn't bow to me and I really don't like him. So anyway, the following day, they have this banquet, right? And Haman, you know, he had that little request in his pocket. He was going to ask the king to basically kill Mordecai just because. And then again, the king offers Esther half of his kingdom if she wants, you know, whatever she wants, he will give it to her. So Esther's like, well, all I want is to live and to be saved, and for my people to be saved, because there's somebody that's planning against us to kill us all. And then she reveals, by saying that, she reveals to the king that she is in fact Jewish. And so the king's like, who's planning to kill you all? What is going on? What is this? Tell me who. And so Esther says, Haman, he's planning to kill us all. And so the king is so outraged that, you know, he's like, you know what? Send Haman. He sends Haman to be hanged, actually, in the gallows that he built for Mordecai. That, you know, that Haman himself had built for Mordecai. So that's really ironic that, you know, Haman built this gallows and he ends up hanging on it, just ironically. But before that, actually, between those two banquets, the first night of the banquet, the king could not sleep. So he had the royal annals or chronicles read to him just so he could fall asleep. And it just so happens that those chronicles fall on the story of when Mordecai saved the king's life by telling him that there was a plot to assassinate him and all that. So anyway, the king has Haman honor Mordecai by parading him around the city in the royal horse and the royal robes and all that. So this just added to Haman's hatred towards Mordecai, right? So anyway, so when the second night of the banquet came, you know, all that happened. Esther told the king, we're gonna be killed. The king is like, what? This can't happen. So this can't happen. The king was like, nope, this cannot happen. He orders Haman to be hanged. Haman dies. But this doesn't solve the issue of all Jewish people being executed, you know, or killed. So because the king could not reverse his decree for some reason. I mean, you're the king, you should be able to do it, but he can't. So Esther and Mordecai come up with this other decree that says that all Jewish people can defend themselves when they're being attacked. And that's exactly what happened. So all the Jewish people defended themselves, they lived, they were able to save themselves. And so that's why they have that Jewish holiday of Purim, I think it's what it's called, Purim, because it was during, you know, that time. So they all defended themselves, they lived. Esther was a hero, right? So she became a hero because she was able to find a way to save her people and herself and her uncle. And so that's where I come in with the hero stuff. So Esther, in my opinion, was a hero because, you know, twice she was able to help do good. The first time she helped save the king. The second time she helped save a nation of people, a whole nation of people. So not only was Esther a leader, she was also a hero. So to conclude, Esther was not only beautiful, she was very brave, she was very wise, and she was also very tough, because in her telling the king that Haman was the one behind the decree or the plot to kill all Jewish people, you know, it takes courage because she knew what the king would do to Haman. So yeah, Esther was just one of those really cool people, and I really would like for you guys to read that book if you have the chance. It's very short. It's one of the shortest books in the Bible. So there you go. Thank you guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you can, comment, you know, what you liked, what you didn't like, what we could improve on, and we'll see you guys another time, another Sunday. Okay guys, bye, and remember, not all heroes wear capes. Some just hold the door.